Three, two, one. Welcome back to another episode of AT Talk. We're still doing the athletic training student guide. This episode is episode 8, and we're going to call this community what now?
Advocacy.
Community advocacy. National Athletic Training Month is tomorrow. It's February 28th. Tomorrow is March 1st. If you didn't know, March is National Athletic Training Month. So, what are we doing as athletic trainers to spread the word and advocate for ourselves and what we do and how we take care of our patient population? So, the floor is open. Go ahead.
I guess I'll get started. I actually, started our Walton Sports Medicine Twitter handler and Instagram handler for advocacy of our profession. That was the main reason I started. I was trying to market our CTAE program for which I teach the sports medicine pathway. And I was just trying to connect with the community of Walton. Actually, was just my initial focus. Uh, Whatever parents had Twitter, whatever student body had Twitter, and also along with Instagram. I was just trying to get within that community of social media just to showcase them, what these students learning, between first aid, CPR, intensive, the intensive knowledge of anatomy and how they get exposed to different things like modalities and so forth. And so that was my initial goal, and it's still my main goal in regards to doing my Twitter account. And then obviously it kind of branched off further in regards to just connecting within the AT community on Twitter and then the AT community on Instagram and so forth. So now it's not just advocating within our Walton community about athletic training and sports medicine, but it's just continue to push the brand within the Twitterverse. So for me, I guess not to be too cliche, but that is one of the main reasons why I started. And that's one avenue that I utilize to try to brand our profession.
I think there's a definite difference between advocacy towards and for other athletic trainers and advocacy towards the community. And when I was a young professional first starting out, I'm still just as passionate as I was then, but I was really passionate about sharing experiences about, hey, I tried this for the first time, or hey, I got a special test positive on this for the first time. But my message might not have been as universally understood. I was talking to other athletic trainers, that was my target. Um, but if you want to get into advocacy, and we can talk about all the benefits that come with creating a relationship and improving your visibility within the community, you kind of have to change your message or change the tone, and change the way you reach out. Probably, I'm sure a lot of athletic trainers will, this is, hopefully you're finding this on Twitter or some other social media. So a lot of athletic trainers work in that universe. But there are other people in your local community that might work and interact through other forms of media. And you have to look into, how to reach people, how to reach that audience where they're at. I know that like newsprint and TV ads and things like that are quickly going out of style, but that might be where some of your biggest donors spend some of their time, learning about the world around them. So if you can connect with a local reporter for the newspaper, yeah, it's going to be in newsprint somewhere else. It might not be the coolest, newest way to connect, but you might reach a different audience than if you're just preaching to the AT choir.
Yeah. Kind of building off of that. So, being the chair of the YP committee in Vermont, we're 20 years behind as a state in terms of how we communicate, everything like that. So I'm actually meeting with a group of YPs next week to discuss how are we going to market and advocate during National Athletic Trainers Month. And one of my big thoughts was there's a lot of local pride in each small town. So local papers, even though they're struggling financially, that's still a main way that people get information. So we might just all together write up one big article and send it to every single small newspaper, do it that way. I think we're behind the ball this year, but I think in the years coming up, getting on our local news stations where they have like a Sunday morning discussions, where we can do public education on that. Our local stations as well. They do a lot of in-state programming. And ultimately, I think those are the populations that, especially the public radio one, that they're going to spend money on resources they need if they think it's going to benefit their community, especially if they have children. Whereas a lot of high schools in Vermont don't have athletic trainers, and I say that being a collegiate athletic trainer. So my goal is to try and make Vermont more attractive to athletic trainers. But in order to do that, we need to have more athletic training positions in our state. So that's on that level. Being in the collegiate setting, all our coaches know what athletic trainers are, and in terms of advocating for our profession, they know what we can do. I just don't think they have a full grasp of how we do it and what goes into getting player A back to participation from an injury. They just know we can do it, but really pushing the message of like, it's not just like they come in for 20 minutes. We do Mr. Miyagi, rub our hands, put it over the injured area and let them back in. There's a lot of thought, there's a lot of care. And in that process, we are making relationships with those athletes that make them more comfortable, because I had an athlete this week who was coming back from an injury and she was nervous. So a lot of it was, I was able to just make the healing process a little easier for her, but it was more convincing her that she could do the things she was doing before she was injured. And so I think that is what I have personally struggled with, showing that this is what I've done to make it so they can come back. So
I'm like you, Tony. I started a Twitter account and an Instagram account pretty much to advocate for our athletic training program. And I've begun reaching out and becoming connected with a lot of, quite a few of the former athletes and former students that I've known. I won't follow or friend anybody that's an active student, but after they graduate, usually I try and wait till they're at least like a junior in college. There's certain things I just don't want to see. But yeah, Tony, I'm like you, and I'm an experienced athletic trainer. We'll say that, and some of the technology and the tools are, a little old dog and new tricks, but I'm working my way through it. As far as advocating for the profession, one of the things I've done for National Athletic Training Month, and I've done it a couple times, is I've reached out to our local mayor and asked if they would recognize National Athletic Training Month. And in our little town of Vienna, Virginia, there are two high schools, ours and Madison High School. So the first time I did it, I invited the mayor to a game. We were playing a soccer game against the other high school. The other athletic trainer came over. We invited the mayor, and she read a proclamation recognizing National Athletic Training Month. You post that on Twitter, it gets out in the newspaper, and more people see that kind of stuff. But things like that take planning, and this year I've not been very good with COVID and things falling through the crack. Because in our little town, they only meet once a month. So if they met already in February, they're not going to meet until the end of March. It's kind of too late to do anything for the month. Now you can still advocate for the profession, that it doesn't have to be a 1 month a year thing, but sometimes some planning. And last year, somebody reached out to our governor, and the governor proclaimed National Athletic Training Month. And they meet more often. So if you're in a bigger city that might meet more often, it's worth reaching out to your local mayor, governor, whoever, and hopefully they recognize the month as National Athletic Training Month.
Yeah. I'm also getting I'm feeling more pressed to advocate more, especially in my local school community. As we've seen with how COVID was with the profession and people losing their jobs and people stepping up in other ways. The staff I'm on, with 4 athletic trainers and 1 head, we've been doing a lot of administrative stuff in terms of testing our campus community, mostly athletics. But when we do surveillance testing, we are going to be a part of that as well. So as we may face more financial burden in the future, showing that, hey, we don't just work with athletes. We were asked to fill a need on our campus, and we did that. And it helped everyone as we go forward as well. So we're not only making our athletes safer, we're making the community safer as well at the same time when needed.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, is to address how you interact with the greater community. We can advocate all we want for, we should have an athletic trainer in every high school. We should have an athletic trainer in this situation. Athletic trainers can do this, that. But if you don't tell the audience or tell the community how it's directly going to benefit them, you're not going to nearly get as much buy-in. Nowadays we say, well, athletic trainers are already skilled in doing these things. We know how to screen people for injuries. We know how to screen people for illness. So you have this position on a COVID screening team, put the athletic trainer in. That fulfills the need that the community has. And if it's, say, parents that have to take a day off of work, have to take time off to take their kid to the doctor or something like that, maybe address the parent meeting with, well, come see the athletic trainer first, and we might save you the trip to the doctor, so you don't have to lose money from taking time off of work to taking your kid to, it's a kind of cascading effect there. So if you can figure out what the target audience needs, what kind of problems they face, and how the athletic trainer can help solve those problems, I think you'll reach a lot more people a lot more effectively.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing, kind of hearing you all talk about, and obviously this is supposed to be an educational piece, is understanding who we need to reach out to. I love what Paul, stated in regards to connecting with the mayor. The mayor, even though they may have just came in to do that particular event, I'm sure that mayor left that event a little bit more educated about athletic trainers. So, biggest thing for us is once we get into our communities, understanding who the stakeholders are for our communities, I think is really important for us as athletic trainers. And also understanding that anytime it comes to a place where we're talking about advocating and so forth, it's actually going to require us to sacrifice some of our time and commitment to make sure that message is pushed out. So talking to you YPs, know that it might be beyond your 40-hour work week to get this process done. But you need to learn who your stakeholders are. It could be your school board. It could be your athletic director. It could be the president of your school, your dean. It could be all kinds of different, could be your mayor. It could be your governor. And a lot of times it is when we're talking about state practice acts and so forth, right? It can go all the way up to the political level. So you need to know who your stakeholders are, and you need to know what level they operate in decision-making. And once you are able to identify that, then you can figure out strategical ways on how to communicate things to them to hopefully get some agendas across the board, So definitely think about that, you all, in regards to, educating and advocating for the profession. I think that's a real key factor. Now, for my YPs who are, a little bit more technically savvy, one of the other viewpoints that I would express is building up your website. I think as ATs, we kind of maybe, especially at the collegiate level, we kind of depend on the communication department to get that all squared away. And that's a luxury that I'm not envious of. Perfect. But for us ones who don't necessarily have that, we need to figure out who that is and how we can get information on a website. Because I know, especially at the high school level, parents still go on websites. They still search websites. I mean, that's what our internet is all about. So if they're searching Walden High School and they're trying to move into your town and trying to find a good school, what's the academics look like, what the athletic website look like. And at this point, some schools may have athletic trainers, and this is something I really want y'all to hear, but you won't even know because your name ain't even on the website. Forget just education. Forget just advocating. How about them just knowing that you're there? And even as an athletic trainer, while I'm traveling to another school and I'm trying to figure out who the AT is and I can't find your information at all, that can be challenging. I shouldn't have to search through Atlas. And even then, people don't update Atlas. So, biggest thing I'm trying to emphasize without rambling on too much is we talked about Twitter, Instagram, even maybe having fun with TikTok and so forth. You can play with that and also, but your website, right, is a core foundation of where parents, communities should be able to find information about you and then also maybe about what you do.
Paul, you're muted.
Big donkey. You're talking about the stakeholders. It may not be as hard as some people think. Get to know your student athletes and what their parents do. How many parents that are in the stands are school board members, superintendents, public figures who we don't even know about. If you don't get to know your family, your families, get to know your community. Sitting in the stands during a basketball game, you happen to buddy up next to one of those people, and you get their ear for an hour and a half, and you could chat about their son's basketball game, their daughter's gymnastics meet, as well as what we do as athletic trainers and how you help that other girl on the team that they know about, and that what hours we put in there, and how many times have we heard, do you guys sleep here? Well, you guys are always here. Getting that person's ear that may be a stakeholder, like Anthony was saying. You never know who's watching you, and that kind of goes back to the student aid conversation. What are you having your student aides doing? Yes, it's important to have them present and be a part and able to learn, but if a superintendent sees a student aide doing your job, well, a high school student can do your job. Why do I need to pay somebody $50,000 if a high school student can do it? So what we're showing and what we're demonstrating, and it's a very fine line, and it really is, and I understand that, but you never know who's looking.
Yeah. To kind of go back to what Tony was saying is knowing your stakeholders, but also knowing what they find valuable, because we may think things are very valuable, but they might not understand it. So we have to figure out not only who they are, but what's going to get them on board. And then going to based on what Paul was saying, I always wanted to work collegiately because I didn't want to deal with parents. That's one of and like football post game tailgates I never attended. And then there was a couple kids from where I grew up, because I worked 2 hours from where I grew up, attending college, and I actually kind of worked with the father, so he's up in tailgates, and I started going, and I started meeting a lot of new parents. And at first, I was a little nervous because it's like I'm here to avoid these people, but it made it easier in terms of communication, in terms of like if someone wasn't feeling well, talking to the parents, or even then, like if the kid was talking to the parents, they say, well, go see Ed. So they kind of helped bridge that gap. But I've heard of stories where when athletic trainers immerse themselves in the community that they are in, that they've had benefits. So like I know a lot of some high school athletic trainers have done very well when they've immersed themselves in the community, getting support from the booster club. Unfortunately, we don't really have a booster club, but who knows? Maybe I get lucky and have a very well-off family at my school, and they're very happy with something I do, or they get inspired by a conversation I had with them, and who knows where that could go, in terms of that aspect. But yeah, I forget where I was going with that because I'm a rambler too. So I'm going to stop.
Well, just to touch base on that, as a high school AT, I agree with that completely. Ed, getting to know getting your face out in front of the parents, I think is vital for high school, secondary school athletic trainers. It's extremely vital because a lot of our parents don't know to what extent we are there for. And then again, with some of us don't even travel, they don't even know to what extent the accessibility is to you because they don't see you. So are you just at school from 2 to 5? Are you at school from 3 to 6? Because you're not at this game, but you're at this game. I see you over here, but not over there. So they don't know. And when
Yeah.
you have that inconsistency, or you don't have the opportunity to elaborate or advocate for yourself, if you're not connecting with them, again, they don't know. And what they will know is maybe what another parent may say, and you hope that's good, but I will say this: if you're covering football and you're not covering volleyball, that volleyball parent that has a kid in another sport may say, well, that athletic trainer doesn't do anything for my student or for my child. Sorry. So now you have that type of information and kind of trickling through, and you haven't had a chance to connect with these parents to advocate for yourself. So for me, not to ramble, but I strongly advise that it's important that we get into our communities, and that is a great way to advocate. So yes, I'm fortunate at my high school, we have 4 athletic trainers, so we are able to cover things more thoroughly. But it's not just about covering, it's about being out there, being available to provide high quality care in all type of events, practice, games, and so forth. And being able to communicate not just with the coaches, but man, we have really gotten opportunities to know a lot of our parents. And I'm sitting here as I'm having a conversation with the parent, and or if I'm having a conversation with the kid, and these parents come by and they're like, we see you got hurt today. I hope you're going in to see Tony Hunter this week. Parents advocating for that, or parents are coming to me and bringing another parent and saying, hey, Johnny was having some issues, but didn't really know where to go. And you took great care of our son. So I just wanted to make sure that, this parent knew who you were and got set up to go. And that's important, very important. So yes, Ed, you hit it on the money. It is important that we are out there exposed and able to voice, educate our parents while we're in the community.
Yeah. I think where I've done really well in interacting with parents is I've had, I don't know how many parents at the collegiate level that I've convinced them not to go to the ER for an ACL tear. Because a lot of my athletes don't come from high schools that have athletic trainers, so they don't have that experience. I think it was Andrea that was saying, instead of going to the doctor's office, seeing the athletic trainer, I think I must have saved 10 trips to the ER throughout 10 years, because they would have just wasted time and money. And I think when I've been able to explain that and told the parents, they really appreciate it, instead of just having someone who's just pass it forward kind of person. There was something else I wanted to say, but yeah, I'm not too sharp today. Sorry.
What I would recommend the students and the young professionals is have a business mindset where you want to have your branding, you want to have your logos, you want to have those on the website, you want the advertisements in your gyms, you want the person, the announce person to say, hey, the school has an athletic trainer, and that athletic trainer is right there so you can talk to them. What I did, besides Facebook, social media, because a lot of my kids aren't on Twitter, they're on Facebook, and that's where their parents are. I made a logo and I put it on t-shirts and I gave it to the kids. Gave it to my basketball kids, gave it to my softball kids, my football kids. Now you have 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 kids walking around school wearing sports medicine. And teachers go, sports medicine, we got sports medicine here? What's sports medicine? Principal sees that. Oh man, we got sports, what's that? And parents see it, and the nurse sees it, and the school board sees it, or your dean sees it. And that's branding. That's, and then you can have those conversations. They walk in, I'm confused. They say sports medicine, I don't know anybody. And you're like, oh, I'm an athletic trainer. This is what we do. These are the services we provide. And we could provide better healthcare if we got some upgrades over here. Let me take you through our facility. You just have to work it, but you have to be willing to put in the time. And it's not, I love National Athletic Training Month. It gets me fired up. But National Athletic Training Month ends April 1st, and your advocacy needs to continue on for the year.
I remembered what I was going to say briefly. So with the advocacy, I think how we treat our athletes is the biggest thing we can do. And with me as a YP, I wasn't a parent. So me just providing services, being available all the time was good enough. But as soon as I became a father and I was treating my first athletes afterwards, that thought of this is someone's child, someone really cares and is invested in this person, and I need to be better than what I have, and thinking I was already good enough to show that I do care for your child as if they were my own. Because I think early on, I used to say stuff like that, but not fully understand it because how could I? I wasn't a parent. So I think that has helped me a lot in terms of how I treat my athletes or patients, if you will. So
One of the things I want to add to what Tom and Tony and Edis and Andrea said is, when you're creating your business, when you're finding out who the stakeholders are, when you're treating the athletes the best that you can, you need to follow up with it. And like Tom was saying, he loves National Athletic Training Month. I hate it. I don't like being out in the public. I don't like putting my face out there, but we have to do it. We have to be uncomfortable to get better. But you also need to follow up. Ed was saying when you send a athlete to the hospital, if they does go to the hospital, we're not just passing off the buck. It's you got to follow up with that. Parents love it when you call them at the hospital. Hey, uh, how long you been at the hospital now? You been there an hour now? Have you been seen? Has the doctor seen you yet? No. Let me have my team doctor call them and follow up and push the buttons a little bit. And when that happens, they really appreciate that. When you follow up the next day, hey, I know Johnny broke his ankle. How's he feeling? Does he need anything? Does he need a new pair of crutches? Is it swelling? Does he need to get back in the doctor's office because the cast is too tight? Those little follow-ups. When you put out the t-shirts and your kids are walking around school with it, follow up with the principal. Follow up. Hey, do you see the t-shirts around the other day? Yeah, where'd those come from? Why did we have those? And then that triggers those conversations. So just to do those few things is nice, but you got to follow up. You got to have it meaning.
I think that goes along with something that a lot of everybody has said a little bit. Advocacy is it can be big steps like I don't know, getting a proclamation or getting on Good Morning America. Do you ever see that? There's athletic trainers on Good Morning America every National Athletic Training Month. But it can also be little things. It does not have to be a big project. You don't have to drop several $100s on t-shirts, but if you want to, that's a great idea too. It's the little things, it's the little ways you interact with your patients, with if you have student athletes, parents, with your administration, with community members, with other healthcare professionals. It is the way, we're a walking advertisement for athletic training. Everything you do, every time you're out on the field, every time you're in front of somebody's camera in the stands, you are advertising and advocating for athletic training. So it can be big things if you want to, if you have the energy, if you have an idea or a passion about it, or it can be little things that just kind of gradually improve your reputation and improve your standing in the community.
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna probably butcher the quote, but it's a little splash can still cause big ripples. So it can be, like you said, a small action, but the effects of that action could end up being monumental for an individual or a whole community. So you never know. Basically, being that just means we have to be aware of every single thing we do, because we might, for every good thing, there's probably a bad thing that one of us have probably also done too. So just keeping that in mind for when we do advocate, because who knows what's happened in the past, and they might say, well, like, this has happened, why should we support you? Which every YP should be aware of.
But you can do the little things to work past that prior negative impression. If
True.
you're the new athletic trainer in a place, they could have just had an athletic trainer that just showed up 10 minutes before the game time and left, as soon as the last buzzer went off. But if you come in there and you, in the process of getting to know the community, you hear about that, you can build it back up. It's not impossible.
Yeah.
I would also recommend is that I think it's great to advocate outside of the profession, but I think it's really great to advocate within the profession and to just pick up the other athletic trainers around you. Like it's been a very difficult year and a half, and there's a lot of people that feel like they're on an island and they're just kind of burned out and not supported. And you can be a real spark for that individual during these hard times. And then you've re-energized them, you've got them back to the game, and they're fired up and they're helping other people, and that grows. So I would recommend that as well.
Agree, man. There's a lot of great ATs out there, man, doing a lot of, amazing stuff. Most of us are not put in an ideal situation. Most of us don't have the true authority that we probably should have as medical care providers and making, decisions if it's safe to play sports. Well, I'm not talking about injuries. I'm talking more with COVID and so forth, right? In reality, if it's truly safe for us to be out there, we know politics are the ones that are actually enforcing some of these big time decisions. But at the end of the day, if the athletes are going to be there, either we're going to decide to fight the good fight with them and be on the ride with them, or we're going to allow them to play sports without athletic trainers. And I know most of us have chosen to be there for our athletes, even through this pandemic. Um, but I agree with you, Tom. It's really important. It's a lot of us out there who are doing amazing things, but maybe not necessarily. And again, we don't do this for the recognition, but I do think, as athletic trainers, it's okay to be recognized because we do such amazing work. It's okay to actually be in the limelight a little bit. I know we like to be behind the scenes, but sometimes since we're talking about advocacy, sometimes we got to be bold enough to actually step out in the front line and say that, no, we are great and that we can do this. And I think, honestly, that may be what we have to do a little bit more is get out of the old school mindset of just being prideful about being in the behind the scenes, because I do think there's some pride in that, cutting that away a little bit and saying, no, we need to get out there, just as much as how we feel great about physicians and how they could contribute. Physicians aren't behind the scenes. A team physician is not behind the scene. I don't think we have to be either. I do think we still need to be humble, but I don't think we need to be behind the scenes. I think we're doing great things, and we got to find a way to put ourselves in the front line a little bit and showcase that.
Super quick, we've got less than a minute, but one thing I want to add on to that, and something Tom said about picking up our peers, pay attention to when award season is out. Nominate your peers, nominate people. I can't tell you how many awards went to somebody that person was the only one nominated. Get some nominations out there to both your state, your district, and national committees.
Yeah. If we don't advocate for ourselves, if we don't speak up, nobody else is going to do it for us.
You guys, shirts where it's at. Get the shirts. Put your team at your basketball school. Put your varsity basketball team in your shirts. Everyone's going to say, what's sports medicine? What's athletic training? Who's that guy out there high-fiving you and airballing threes? That's your medical provider. Thank you for coming on, spending your time with us. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week and just stay safe and just keep crushing it.